Welcome to the FAFSA Leadership Lounge, where we dive into the policies shaping the work of Florida's school leaders. I'm Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janice Stevens, lobbyist for FAFSA and for several school districts across the state of Florida.
So let's start today with some potential good news. Late Sunday night, the U.S. Senate came to an agreement to end the federal government shutdown, which is now in its 41st day as of this recording. While this doesn't mean that the shutdown is over, it's a step in the right direction.
That is right. And it still needs to be considered and voted on by the House, which won't meet until Wednesday. But if that's successful, it will then go to the president. So this process is still a little ways from being resolved, but at least we're in a step in the right direction, as you said.
And absolutely something to keep an eye on, of course. We also want to get back to the news here in Florida. Last week was a very busy committee week with many meetings and new bills being filed. FAFSA is now tracking about 90 education-related bills with many more to come.
That is right. So last week, as you mentioned, was a committee week, and it was our third committee week. So we're halfway through now. There'll be 3 more committee weeks before session begins. And so here are some highlights of what happened last week. The legislature approved additional funding to reimburse public school districts and families after last year's budget was short about $47 million for school districts and then additional monies for those families because of some of the complications with the scholarship program. So that was huge. We really didn't know that was going to happen. Obviously, districts have been without their portion of that money for a good while now. And so we're certainly glad that that was able to be resolved. They also held a meeting at the House Pre-K-12 Appropriations Subcommittee, held another meeting. This is now their third meeting, all focusing on the funding for these scholarship for students and trying to get everything worked out. Lawmakers, if you were there at the meeting, or you can go back and listen, they were very critical of these scholarship organizations for not submitting payments on time. In some cases, there were students that were on the second count, but not on the first count, who were funded for both, which is obviously not what's supposed to happen. The money is supposed to follow the student. So it's definitely an ongoing issue.
Absolutely. And of course, we know that the legislature is going to continue to talk about this. They are now pushing for even more transparency and accountability in how the funds are distributed to prevent these issues in the future.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see as we go into the next set of committee meetings if they continue to focus on this issue. I don't recall a time where we've had one committee focusing on the same subject for so many weeks in a row. And it shows the importance.
Yeah. And next week will be very telling because we have our 4th committee week next week. So we'll see if they continue on this dialogue.
Absolutely. Over on the Senate side, in the Pre-K-12 Education Policy Committee, they welcomed Craig Damon, Executive Director of the Florida High School Athletic Association, and Dr. Andrew Ramjet, who is the Executive Director of the Florida Coaches Coalition. They discussed, Mr. Damon discussed kind of the state of high school athletics, basically where we are, how things are feeling and going right now, looking at participation trends, student safety, the effort to continue the statewide support of student athletes. And it was quite fun. They invited 2 student athletes who were there and shared their perspectives of what it's like to be a student athlete today. So it was quite interesting.
And they also discussed the pay of high school coaches, noting that even though teacher salaries have increased over time, the coaching supplements have not kept up because they were never directly tied to the same standards of teachers. So, of course, football was the sport that they used as an example because of the big differences between Florida and other states.
So yes, they shared that the average compensation for a Florida high school football coach is about $5,339. That's what they get as like an extra stipend, which ends up working out to, based on their calculations for how much time those individuals actually put in, about $3.55 per hour for the season. So not a lot of money there. But if you compare that to our neighbors in Georgia, they gave us some of their statistics, and the highest paid high school football coach makes $219,214.65. So that is obviously a dramatic difference. They pointed out that some of it is due to what other states are allowed to do. And it is important to note the coaches were sharing when they were here that because obviously up here where we are in North Florida, we're very close to Georgia. Some of our neighbors over in the Panhandle are obviously very close to Alabama as well. So there is the ability for people to just go, just a few miles north and then get some significantly different, funding.
That number is absolutely unbelievable to me in so many ways. Not that they don't work hard and that coaches don't deserve that. It's just absolutely unbelievable. But uh, Texas is also another one of those three main states where they also allow booster clubs to support their coaching compensation on top of that district supplement, on top of professional learning for coaches and technology like analytical tools and film software. So those Georgia, Alabama, and Texas allow this additional money to come from boosters.
We've certainly seen kind of behind, at least in this state, in comparison to those states, which are usually states where we have a lot of similarities. We tend to do things in a similar way. So it's interesting that Florida is so different. So that certainly, it was a big part of the conversation and the dialogue. And so we'll see how that continues throughout session.
Yes, and more to come, of course. In other committees, lawmakers discussed some economic and public safety bills, including House Bill 7031, which would allow permanent sales tax exemption for certain health and safety supplies like hurricane preparedness items. Also, House Bill 197 was successfully heard in its first committee meeting. This bill will require all Florida employers, regardless of size, to use the federal E-Verify system to confirm worker eligibility. We will, of course, stay tuned on these bills as well as all of the other states that are starting to, or all of the other bills that are starting to.
Absolutely. And we also saw last week something that it has been a bit of a trend over on the House side, that some of their committees have been taking field trips, and the House Education Administration Subcommittee got to take a field trip last week.
I like a field trip. Where'd they go?
They actually visited Sable Palm Elementary School here in Leon County. The committee met with school leaders and staff to discuss student achievement, community partnerships, and ongoing challenges. You may recall, Sable Palm is a school that has made significant academic progress over the last 3 years. Their school grade jumped to an A this past year, which was just incredible. So it was a good opportunity to share what it is they did that led to their success.
That is amazing. One, for them, also a great opportunity for both the school students,
yes,
the teachers, the administrators, and those legislators. And just wonderful time to celebrate their work. So while we're on the topic of good news, our friends in Osceola County last week held their 2025 State of Education event. They held that at Osceola Heritage Park in Osceola County, of course. And the district leaders celebrated what they called the most successful academic year in Osceola County's history. This included a solid B assessment rating for the county, which is their highest score ever.
That's awesome. And the Osceola Superintendent Mark Shanoff addressed the audience, sharing that every high school in the district is either an A or a B school, and that Ponciana High School has the most significant improvement. They went from a C to an A.
That district is doing great things. They had measurable improvements across all subjects, including ELA, where grades 9 and 10 rose 6 points. In math, where grade 3 improved by 49 points, and grade 8 improved by 40 points. Science and social studies also had great improvements. And we just want to say congratulations to Dr. Shanoff and all of Osceola County educators and students and community members and parents, because it takes everyone to continue to support these students. So congratulations on the great work.
It's amazing. It's wonderful, wonderful news. And to remind everyone that's listening, if there is something particular that you would like us to highlight, we'd love to celebrate these wonderful stories. And so send them our way. We'd love to talk about what's going on. That's just wonderful across our state. Also, this past week, I had the chance to join the members of the Florida Association of District Instructional Materials Administrators, or FATMA. at their annual conference, which this year was in Jacksonville. It was a great time to hear from districts across the state about how they're finding creative ways to make sure that students have access to those high quality instructional materials, even given the fact that we are facing some budget challenges, of course. You may recall a few years ago, the legislature eliminated the categorical funding that was specific for instructional materials and folded those dollars into the larger pot of money for school districts. While this definitely gave more flexibility about how these funds can be used, it also means that there's some tough choices that have to be made when it comes to exactly what will be spent to provide those materials for students. So it can be a challenge, to be sure.
Of course. And it sounds like it was a great meeting. Of course, we know from FAFSA experiences that these conferences are valuable opportunities for leaders to connect, to share ideas, and to learn from one another. We have an event coming up soon that we would love to make sure everyone is able to attend, which of course is Advocate 26. It is going to take place in Tallahassee, January 26th through the 28th. We encourage you to come and join us. This is one of the most impactful gatherings that we host each year. It's really a chance for Florida's administrators to make their voices heard and to see even more in depth the legislative process. So your voice matters now more than ever. Obviously, where there's been lots of discussions with both the House and the Senate, where administrator voice is important and can help really lend into continuing those discussions. So the Advocate 26 conference is designed to help you engage directly with your legislators, participate in the legislative process, and work together to make positive changes for your school, your district, and of course, our amazing state.
That's right. And in some other political news, Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings officially launched his campaign for governor. So his announcement positions him as a major Democratic contender in what's becoming a very high-profile race. And so we'll follow that. We seem to be getting more people running for governor every week. So that is continuing to be exciting. And of course, the next legislative committee week is next week, which is November 17th through the 21st. So we will start to see those meetings pop up on the calendar, and we'll keep you updated about what we expect to cover during the next week.
Of course, the best way is to make sure that you are checking your emails from FAFSA. The FAFSA morning announcements, formerly the News Tracker, is being sent out each day, and on Mondays has a great advocacy update in there. And then you can also expect our Friday Facts, of course, to include some additional updates. The FAFSA website, FAFSA.net, is available to you 24/7. And we thank you so much for listening. Be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about the FAFSA Leadership Lounge podcast, and stay tuned for more.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast was produced by Jeff Willoughby. Original musical recordings by David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topics, suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.